Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is your host, Taylor, and I hope that y'all are moving forward with the transition, going into fall, that you are just going with the flow of life, because life be happening and shit be going on, okay? So I hope you are taking care of yourselves and that you're excited coming into this podcast episode. I am thrilled about today's guest. I have really loved following her, and I'm so excited to finally have her on here to talk about disability and life. And honestly, we get into all of the things. So I hope you're ready, and we'll kind of get straight into it because I'm just very, very honored and excited to have this guest on. So today I will be speaking with Syanne, who is a 29-year-old disability activist with several rare and chronic illnesses, all of which are incurable. And despite how people may view her electric wheelchair, oxygen, and chest port, she states that she is a young woman with dreams and goals like anyone else her age. She's a model, an activist, a college student, an artist, and a social media influencer, which is how I found her. She's worked with many different brands and recently is going to be in a magazine. So we'll talk about that. And one of my favorite things on her bio, she has, "If I'm too much, go find less," which that's the fucking mantra, y'all. That's it. If I'm too much, go find less. Okay. That's it. That's literally all the period. Okay. Nothing more there. I'm just so excited. We should get straight into this episode, straight into this interview. We're going to be talking about disability, sex, relationships, interracial relationships, all of the things. As usual, come into this with an open mind, an open heart, open ears, and let's talk about it. So welcome, Syanne, to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to virtually meet you finally.
I know. I feel like I've been following you for a while. And so part of me just always feels like, I feel like I would really hang out with this chick. She seems really fucking cool. And I love everything that you post and that you share. So thank you for your vulnerability online.
Thanks for listening to it.
Yeah, of course. So for folks who don't know you, for folks who don't follow you, and are just now being introduced to you, I'm wondering kind of where we should start with letting people know who you are, what identities you hold in the world, kind of how you navigate through life with the identities that you hold. Can you share a little bit of just kind of how you identify yourself?
Well, my pronouns are she, her. And I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm mixed race. Puerto Ricans are made up of a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. But I am indigenous, I am African, and I am white, which is Spanish and Portuguese. And I'm disabled. I use an electric wheelchair and oxygen, obviously, and have, a lot of little medical devices. I have a port. I just got surgery for a new one. And navigating the world as a disabled woman of color, especially when trying to make it in the, entertainment, modeling, fashion industry, is extremely difficult. It's frustrating. And I think that that's something I've always been interested in. Not I think, but I have been since I was a child. I did modeling clubs when I was in high school. I've been applying to agencies since I was 11, maybe 10. It's been a long journey, and I finally got signed within the last 2 years to 2 agencies and got my first modeling job 2 months ago. And I think I can say it now because it came out this month, but hasn't been posted online. But anyway, not yet. It's going to be posted this week. But it was for Hunger magazine, which is a really popular editorial fashion magazine. And I did get that. So that was reassuring to me that there is something there, but it's really hard with the identities I have to exist in that space, because what I've noticed is the less marginalized identities you have in the industry, the more successful you will be. Those standards are still there.
Yeah. Well, first, congrats. That is so exciting and so deserved. So I'm so excited for you. And I can't wait to see you like share that on social when that comes out. That is super exciting. And yeah, I mean, you've got kind of layers of marginalized identities that do make it more difficult to, especially in the fashion world. But I do always notice your makeup in moments like, oh, she's doing her makeup so good. Like she did such a bomb job on that. Even with Naya, she's like my little sister. I was showing her your page because you had done a reel of like a few different outfits, I want to say it was. It was like I want to say it was a 2000s inspired outfit look that you did.
Yes.
Yeah. We were going through it. And she just had so many questions.
I'm sure.
But it was so good for her to like, I think, just be aware that other people exist in different ways and also at the same time can do things that you enjoy too, like experimenting with their makeup and trying on different outfits and being involved in fashion, you know, like she watches these like fashion shows or whatever, you know, like all the shit that kids watch that sometimes they probably shouldn't be watching that don't have that representation.
Yeah, it's important. I watched those shows when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think we grew up in the same, like, you're a millennial, right?
Yeah, 28.
Okay, so yeah, we're like the same age. I'm 29.
Yeah.
But like when we grew up, there wasn't really a lot of tan, brown, mixed girls or anything. What we saw was usually pencil thin, blonde, blue eyes. And we do watch those when we're young, I think, because we're trying to find someone to relate to or see, you know, ourselves reflected in. And when you don't see that at her age or in our age, it's damaging.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to take a short break right here with a little check-in because y'all know that Dipsea is one of my favorite apps, okay? It has honestly been, since I've been living in the basement to my family, been very hard to find space for pleasure with things with the house, with work, with everything. I'm stressed, okay? And it has been hard to go to sleep because I just feel like I need to keep doing work. But honestly, I open up my Dipsea app, which is like all audio, short, sexy stories that are designed to turn you on, and they do just that. And honestly, sex is like my happy place, y'all, okay? It is my escape. And they also do have things like wellness sessions. They have things that are really relaxing. Like one of them was like the fireplace was on and the man was just like drawing, like sketching in the background and just like really relaxing noises. And, you know, it's like you're by yourself, so you listen to it and it's relaxing, or you're with a partner and you want to listen to something that's sexy to get you kind of in the mood. My favorite is I listen to the ones that are just him and you, so you can filter it for like him and her and her, him and him, whatever floats your boat, to hear these like little sexy stories. And I'll share a little bit of the one I listened to last night. We were out to dinner, okay, me and my date in our story. We were out to dinner and we went into the bathroom and he put a little vibrator in my underwear. And then when we went back and sat down at the table, he was like talking about like the anticipation and like all the things and what he did. And actually, I did listen to two last night. The other one, we were at like a show. It's like you hear like, you know, the background of like people talking like way in the background, and like we're up in like this balcony as like the show's about to start, and he's like taking his fingers like up my thighs and like, and I like I'm gonna get distracted, okay? But highly recommend Dipsea. They are my favorite to listen to. For listeners of the show, I'm so excited. Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/Taylor. So it's 30 days, okay? I just gave y'all a small little glimpse of what I listened to last night. You can explore that for 30 days for free, okay? Spread the word, share it with your friends. Go to DIPSEA stories.com/Taylor. Again, that's dipseastories.com/Taylor, and enjoy yourself, okay? Make space for that pleasure. We all deserve it. There's too many things happening. Just unwind and escape into some sexy time, okay? And with all of that, we can get back to the show. for you, you started off in the industry like as an able-bodied person. And I think, you know, in some ways your story is unique when people think of the disabled community, that there's often this like, oh, well, it's them and it's just these people because they're born this way. Mm-hmm. And there isn't much thought to the fact that like any one of us could become disabled at any point in our lives. And you kind of were going through life, you know, I would say maybe almost as if most of our listeners were, and then started running into some medical problems, and now you hold this identity that you didn't have for majority of your life, or at least it wasn't identified.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can kind of share a little bit about that part of your life.
Absolutely. I would love to. Not a lot of people ask, so this is awesome. But, what's really wild about the whole thing is that I was born with a genetic illness. I was born with these immune deficiencies and all these things. And I went through life having a lot of health issues, but I never identified as being disabled, even though, you know, I was having seizures when I was a young adult. I was having stomach problems, a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't identify as chronically ill even then, just because doctors, you know, were like, you're mostly healthy, like you're just anxious, you're having, you know, they thought I had borderline personality disorder at one time, and I believed it because I was having mood swings, but then found out lack of blood flow to the brain, lack of oxygen to the brain is going to make you moody.
Yeah.
Plus, like hormone issues. I mean, it was just like the perfect storm. But when they're not looking for that, and they don't look for that in young women, they always say, you look good, you know, and I looked good. I still look good, you know, saying that.
Yeah, you do.
I looked good. Like I was walking, I was working, I was trying to, live, even though I didn't feel well. I felt sick all the time, but I just didn't think there was anything major wrong with me. So I did pageants, and I did my first pageant when I was 21 and lost, and then came back and did it again, won that one, went to states, lost, went back again, and ended up winning Miss Maryland for the Miss World organization. And I did all that as what I thought I was as an able-bodied person. Struggled a lot after that year, physically started declining really fast. And when I look back on those pictures, it's like I'm looking at somebody else, to be honest with you. The whole process of being told that you are okay, or that it's in your head, or that you're mentally ill, which is a totally valid, you know, valid illnesses too. But the way that they were treating me because they thought that I was mentally ill was really traumatizing. And even when I would go to the ER just weeks before I was in the ICU, like there was one ER that didn't want to run any tests, didn't want to do anything. They just sent me home. And then the next week after a surgery, I was in the ICU. And that was really traumatizing. It was only 2 years ago. So it still is a trauma that I'm processing and dealing with. And my body has changed a lot. You know, I found out I need steroids. I'm on steroids. I have been for the last 2 years. I have low cortisol. They don't know why, but it can be dangerous. So you need to stay on cortisol, because if you don't have any cortisol, you'll drop dead. Like it's very dangerous. And this is something I was going through life, not even knowing, you know, existed. And my body's changed with the steroids. I've gained 50 pounds. I used to be really thin. I have scars everywhere. And it's a lot to go from that to walking down a runway and doing a little bit of acting to being in an electric wheelchair, using oxygen, having scars and all this stuff. It was hard. And then I realized when I got back into the modeling world, it was hard before as a person of color, but, you know, I have a privilege being a light-skinned girl and pretty privilege, and I was thin. So those were all working in my favor. But then I became disabled, and I became considered plus size because I'm a size 10 to 12. And before I was 0, and scars and wheelchairs. And the way that the industry has been since that, I was just like, wow, whole other world.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that it's still an industry that you want to be in, given all of that? Or is it like, yeah, I want to fight to be that representation, or like, I don't want anything to do with that? Like, how do you figure out your place or make space for your place in that?
I've had a lot of emotions about continuing in the modeling industry. I've been so angry that I've been like, I'm fucking done. Like, fuck this shit. Like, it hurts so bad, but it's hard to let go of something that has been a part of me in some way since I was a little girl. And it is something that I'm passionate about. And it's not something I want to give up on. There are some people that look like me in the industry that are wheelchair users. There's like 2 I know off the top of my head, Jillian Mercado and Aaron Phillip. And they use electric wheelchairs and all that. But those are the only ones I know of. And that's ridiculous. And, but, you know, if they weren't there for me to look at and look up to, maybe I wouldn't be strong enough to push through all the discrimination and capitalism and everything else that's in the industry, because I've wanted to give up, but it's just something I feel I have to do and that I'm really determined to do.
Yeah, I understand that, you know, especially because it's been a part of you since you were a child, and, you know, that anger has a purpose, that frustration has a purpose, and often we end up wanting to use that when it is in some kind of, when it's because of an injustice of some kind. We want to use that anger to fight it and, you know, make it different, try to make it just. And, you know, as hard as it is, I know that you do also have, at least from what it appears, I'm making an assumption here, but it seems like you have a very good support system through navigating all of this. You are married, you have a husband, and oh my God, you did this one reel where it was like, show me what love looks like. And it was like all the stages of your relationship. And it was like so beautiful and so sweet. And you have been with him since before becoming disabled. And he's been, seems very supportive of your entire process and experience throughout this. And I always say, like, if you have a good support system, like, you can really like make it through some tough shit. Like, it really comes down to our support system.
You're absolutely right. And that's a privilege in itself. You know, a lot of people who aren't disabled, they don't have anybody. And a lot of the reasons they don't have anybody is because of ableism. You know, people have this idea that people that are disabled can't be partners, can't be in romantic relations, can't have sex, you know, all of that stuff. But I was already with him, like you said. And I think that he is the type of person where, had he met me when I was like this, I think he still would have pursued me. He pursued me for over a year before I went out with him, by the way. But I think everybody thinks the person they love is different, but he is different. He's a little nerdy. He's, you know, sweet. He's emotional. He cries more than I do. He would hate. I told you that. He cries a lot more than I do for movies. If he's happy for me, like, he's just a good man, and he's a white man, and we're in an interracial relationship, and he understands that he has privileges and I have benefit from those privileges. And I think that's rare to find, like, everything that he is. It is. Even for people who aren't disabled, you know, it's hard to find that. So I'm lucky.
Yeah. Well, so what, can you share a little bit about like what those conversations looked like in the beginning stages of your relationship, given that he is white and that you hold these other identities?
In the beginning of our relationship, it really wasn't something we talked about, to be honest with you. It became more of like something that we had to talk about when I would encounter people, forgive me, from the church, and I'm not Christian anymore because of these reasons, but who didn't treat me well because I'm too liberal, or, you know, I believe in white privilege, or, you know, Black Lives Matter and all these things.
The church has definitely got a lot of shit backwards.
It does. And when you're kind of in the South, it's not a fun place to be. But it was when those things started happening that we started to talk about, you know, the fact that I am Puerto Rican, that I am of mixed race. And I think like any, you know, I don't want to say anything bad, but I think like any person who has privilege at first, there's this like defense that comes up. And I think we've all have done it. Where it's just like, what do you mean? Especially if you don't understand what they're saying. And there's not a lot of education on white privilege. So you hear that and you think privilege as like, you're lucky or something like that. And I mean, it is, but you know, that's a whole other thing. But it was, you know, he was like, what do you mean? But then we talked about it and he started understanding. He started watching documentaries on his own. Like he did the work. And it took time, you know, especially because he grew up in a conservative household. But he very much thinks like I do, you know, now like, he understands. And he sees a lot of it now too. You know, he made me be treated differently. He saw me a couple times be treated differently around people who might be a little racist or, you know, and so when he sees it, it's like, wait, wow, it's there, you know? So it's become it's something we still talk about often.
Well, it sounds like he definitely opened himself up to be able to learn and challenge the bias and perhaps some of the values or beliefs that he originally held to be able to hold you in relationship, which I always think is fantastic when folks can do that, because typically that doesn't only extend to the person that they're in relationship with, it extends out to other people of color as well. And, you know, it sounds like he was open to unpacking that. I'm wondering how, when you were diagnosed or, you know, when you were kind of going through this process of like, oh, like I'm disabled, like I have a chronic illness and all of this, what parts of maybe even your own internalized ableism or his ableism, like how that showed up, how y'all worked through that?
I definitely think I had more ableism than he did. He was very supportive. Of course it was emotionally difficult for us. I was going through a lot of trauma. So sometimes, and I've never shared this before, but I used to just scream at the top of my lungs and cry for hours. Like, cause it's so different, you know, like it was a lot at first. It was very traumatizing for the both of us. But he handled it, you know, really well. The conversations we would have would be like, I don't feel beautiful. I don't feel sexy. Like I'm wearing this and you want to like, you know, have relations. Like I can't breathe, you know? And he's like, I don't care about that. You're still sexy. Like, you know, or my port, like I'll be accessed one day and I have to stay accessed for a few days. And he's like, oh, let's, you know, have some fun. And then it's like, I feel so insecure, you know, and then I would start crying. And he was just as excited about everything as he's always been. He's never like embarrassed of me. It was mostly me. It was me that had a problem with me. And he was the easy part. It was me, like that I had to learn about ableism. I had to learn about disability. I had to learn how to live in a world where people were treating me much different than before. And we talked about it a lot, and there was a lot of reassurance that there was nothing wrong with me and it was everybody else the problem. Well, and that just becomes extra hard and is a lot to unpack when you have moved through the world as, you know, more so an able-bodied person, to where you are now confronted with perhaps some of those thoughts or judgments of what people with disabilities looked like or were like. And now it's like, holy fuck, that's me now. Absolutely. And you know, what's bizarre about it too, is that I think because I had so many health issues in my mind, there were times, especially when a few years before all this happened, I was getting tested for MS. And I thought, like, what would it be like to be a wheelchair user? Like, how would that feel? And I was thinking that while I was going through this testing. I was having neurological issues. They couldn't figure it out. And then I just put that away in the back of my mind. And then I think it was 2 years later after that, this was 4 years ago, that happened. And it doesn't even measure up with what I was thinking. Not even close.
How so?
Well, I think you don't think about inaccessibility being a problem everywhere. Like, it's not just about parking spots. Like, I used to think, oh, there's accessible parking spots. That's great. There's never enough. There is never enough, because I think doctors overprescribe disability placards. And there's been a lot of conversations about this, people abusing them.
Yeah.
And then there's like, you don't think about not being able to reach to the top of the shelf in the store. You don't think about the fact that, yes, there's ramps, but sometimes they're in the most inconvenient places, like way over here and the stores over here, or like behind the building. You don't think about seating in a restaurant, like, there's so much, getting a car to fit the wheelchair you use. Like, we don't have the right car for the wheelchair that I'm supposed to be using all the time. So I can't go out for long periods of time. Like, that's not something that I thought about. Or the biggest thing I didn't think about, home accessibility. I have inaccessibility all over my home because we rent. We live in 400 square feet. It's tiny.
Yeah.
Hard. The walls are all marked up. I don't know what's harder, out there or in here. And I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah. And so then how do you even navigate on a day-to-day basis just in your home with all of that inaccessibility?
I'm going to be honest with you. I sit in one spot all day, basically. It's here.
Yeah.
This is my couch because I can't do much else. The kitchen, tiny. The bathroom, you could really only fit one person in it. The shower, it's not working for me anymore. We have a seat in there, but it's becoming harder and harder and harder to fit in there. And so I can't do much. I used to cook in the beginning of my illness because it wasn't as bad as it's gotten. But it was painful. I'm cooking sideways. The counters are too high. I have arthritis. That's painful. Things are too high up. I'm burning myself on the oven because it opens like this and not like up higher. It's so hard. And with the housing market the way it is, like it's hard enough for people our age trying to buy a house in the middle of the pandemic. The older people never had to go through what we're going through. But when you throw in the disability, you can't just buy any house. Because you have to pay for that house, and then you have to pay to make all the changes, which are cheap.
They are even more expensive than you would think that they were. Even when you think, oh, it's expensive, it's more expensive, and it fucking sucks.
Yes, it does. And we've been saving up to the point where I think we're almost ready to just build something. We've been saving for years, even before I got sick, because there was, we just wanted to save. But now it's like, we need it for this. But then after we buy a house, we still need a van. We still, it's never ending.
Yeah. Well, like 400 square feet though.
It's tiny.
Like, girl, that's real tiny.
Tiny house living.
Yes. And that's something that the two of you wanted.
It is something that we wanted before.
And you were in this space before? Okay.
Yes, we were. And, I was still working. And he's in school. He hadn't gotten his associates. He has his associates, and he's graduating next year with his bachelor's. So like, we never had a ton of money, but we were okay. You know what I'm saying? And we loved tiny houses. We wanted to, have a mobile tiny house. And then this happened. Then I lost I had to leave my job. We didn't have the extra income. And then it became sort of like, okay, now we're kind of stuck here. And, we kind of didn't have much of a choice before either, but I was working. So I think it worked out because it could have been worse. We could have moved to a bigger apartment or something before this happened, and we wouldn't have been able to possibly pay the rent.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, the two of you have really had to grow up, I want to say, in a lot of ways, and growing up sucks because you have to deal with all of this bullshit. And that is just so much stress.
It is. And I don't think a lot of people don't understand that, you know, like, I think they see, and it's partially maybe my fault because I think I'm open, but I don't show a lot of what I'm struggling.
That is not your fault. I'm going to stop you right there. That is not your fault.
I feel like, okay, maybe it's not my fault, but for some reason my mind thought that. But it's just like, I'm dressed up. I'm wearing, but people don't know where I got my clothes. This whole outfit was like $12. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I get a lot of hand-me-downs. Like, most of our furniture was hand-me-downs. Like, and it's like people don't realize how hard it is, especially the older generation. And then you throw in being a person of color, and then you throw in being a disabled person of color. And it's hard. And like you said, we had to grow up faster. And I think one of the hardest parts about it is watching other people reach milestones that you wanted, like having children, or, you know, right before my surgery, I actually visited an OBGYN and was planning to have a baby. I had a pregnancy book. And then a few weeks later, you know, that happened. And now there's like 5 people I know that are pregnant right now. And 2 of them are in my family. And I'm so happy for them. But I still feel pain when I see them. And it's a part of disability I don't think a lot of people talk about. They're like, well, you can still have a baby. No, if I can't take care of myself, it's not that I'm, you know, at first I had the ableist view of, I don't want to pass on my illnesses to this child since there is genetic, you know, Ehlers-Danlos, mutations, all these other things. I didn't want to give that to my child. I don't care about that anymore. My child would be fine. I'm okay, you know, but it's the taking care of the child. I can't lift more than like, I don't know, half a pound without passing out. I mean, how would I, you know, do that? So that's been the hardest part, is watching people have babies, buy houses, you know, and it's happening. It seems maybe because I'm, you know, sick and disabled and kind of stagnant, that it seems like I'm seeing everybody do it. And that's traumatic in itself. You know, you had a dream that I had bought a pregnancy book. I was ready. We were ready. We said after surgery, we're going for it. And the surgery was for endometriosis. So I was like, cool, I'll be able to conceive. Like, that's not what, it was just not the path that I was supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, you have to grieve a future that you envisioned for yourself and for your relationship and your family that now looks very different or isn't even accessible.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, I can't really see the future, you know, and that's not to be morbid, but that's just reality. It's like people get port infections and die. This is just the truth. People with my condition have died. I have autoimmune autonomic ganglionopathy. So my immune system's attacking and damaging my nervous system, which controls your heart rate, your digestion, your breathing. If that's destroyed, you know. So when I look in the future, I'm like, what's even going to happen? I don't know. But that's why I feel such an eagerness to do what I want to do now and have the dreams that I have and go to school and do everything that I can, because I don't know. I have the hope that I'll live another 20 to 30 years, but I don't know. You know, I almost died already twice. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah. How do the two of you like just even navigate all of that? Like, it's so intense, and it's literally a conversation of like life or death, essentially, within your relationship. And I mean, yeah, that's just got to be so hard.
It is. And my husband, I told you he's emotional, but he cries whenever I think we talk about it. But we've talked about, you know, doing a will. We started to do like advanced directives, I believe is what it's called. But we did that too early and I wasn't ready. So I never finished it. we've talked about it, and we do marriage counseling, because what happened to us was very traumatic, and that's helpful. But we've talked about all that, and it's hard. I mean, I think generally I'm okay thinking about it. I worry about my husband and my parents, and people say, well, you look great. That's not going to happen. Like you're, fine.
Yeah.
But you don't know, when you have a chronic illness, anything can happen. It doesn't even matter if it's what I have. It can be anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's just hearing you share parts of your experience and like your story and your life. It sounds like there's such a balance of like dealing with trauma and stress and inaccessibility and grieving and there's just really heavy, intense, life-altering things with also this beautiful support and like joy and like the small things almost of just like even him, still really like assuring you around your worth and your beauty and sexuality and like I want to say eagerness, but maybe that's not the right word, but his pursuit of you in that way of just like seeing you for you and still engaging with you in an intimate way in that way that like is so beautiful that it's like really, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking of both of these things being held at the same time. I'm wondering if that's how you experience it.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised how well you explained it. Like a lot of people don't get it, but yes, absolutely. It's complex. There's a lot of layers. You can be both happy about something small that happened, we both can be, and then still be grieving another part of that same thing that we're happy about, like building a home together, hopefully soon. And then realizing we can't have kids, at least not right now. And then there's this, yes, we're moving forward and, possibly building a house. And then there's our house is going to be empty, So it's like really complex. I don't know if a lot of relationships would survive what we've been through. But when we first started dating, the next month after we started dating, which was like November 2015, I believe, I was in the hospital with sepsis because of a double kidney infection. And he was there every day without showering, without anything. And that was like his first taste of, what it's going to look like in just a few years.
That neither of you knew.
Yeah. We were freshly started dating. And he's just very loyal, very committed. He's mature and immature in other ways, but and mature in the ways that you need a man to be, or any partner, not just a man, any partner.
Yeah. He sounds like a Cancer. Is he a Cancer?
He is. How did you know that?
I knew it. I'm a Cancer.
Oh my gosh. I got to tell him that. That's crazy.
You're like, he cries a lot. He's really emotional. He's really caring. He's so supportive. I was like, I'm getting some Cancer vibes here.
He is. And I'm a Pisces. And we're like one of the most compatible signs. But anyways, yes, he is. I got to tell him that.
I love it. Well, and I think like, I guess one area of this that I want to dig a little bit deeper into, because I think, like I had scoliosis, so I have metal rods in my back from my neck down to my spine, down to my butt. And, there are ways in which it causes discomfort and changes my relationship with my body and changes the way that I kind of navigate through things. I've never necessarily identified myself as a part of like the disabled community. But I do think about how life shit can just happen and then boom, you're in a different period of your life that you never would have imagined for yourself, and how that changes the relationship with your body. And I guess I'm wondering if you're open to sharing a little bit more and digging deeper into this part of like your relationship with your body, like even intimately, like how you are able to show love for your body, how you are able to experience pleasure in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've always had a complicated relationship with my body, even before this. I had an eating disorder growing up. I was heavily bullied, and that I moved from the islands to Southern California, which is like where a lot of blondes and, white people live. And so I got bullied for that. And it made me feel like I hated the parts that were brown of me, that I hated where I was from, that I didn't want to speak Spanish, that I didn't want to do none of that. And so, I had developed an eating disorder, and then I got over that when I was 19 years old. And then I started doing pageants, and that actually helped a lot with my self-esteem. People think it does the opposite. For a small number of people, but most people like me who were shy, who was nervous all the time and didn't like the way I looked, it did the complete opposite for me. It made me feel good. And then when this happened, I don't even know how to explain it, because I felt confused, I think. Like, I didn't know how I felt at that time. Yeah. But once I started to get used to the fact that this wasn't going away, because it took me a couple months to get correct diagnoses. I put off getting a walker. I put off getting a manual wheelchair, because I was like, no, I'm going to get better. No, I'm going to get better. And instead of getting better, I, got worse. And I just started doing the same thing. One day I just was like, I'm just going to do the same thing I was doing before. I don't care. Like, I'm going to try. And would dress up, would do my makeup, would do my hair, would look at myself and be like, I look good. And it was just like a kind of like a fake it till you make it sort of thing that I'm doing right now with my new scars from the new surgery. It's just like getting used to that this is part of me, and it sucks kind of like what I went through, but there's beauty and strength. There's beauty in my scars. This is a part of me now. This is human diversity. Like, I should be proud of my body because it's been through a lot. And that helps me even with the weight gain, which I think was probably the hardest thing for me. Like I said, going from a 0 to like a size 10 to 12 in 2 years it's fast. And that was hard because all of a sudden my clothes weren't fitting. And for a while there, I couldn't buy any new clothes because I didn't have enough money. So I was just wearing like PJ pants, and that was really hard. And then I started making some money on social media, and, I dress myself up every day. I do my makeup every single day. And when I feel my worst, that's when I do it the most extra, that's when I need it. It's not for anybody else. It's because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like how I was before, if that makes sense, because I am the same in some ways.
Yeah. Doing it because it makes you feel good because that's how you were.
I mean, in a way, yes, because it gives me, I lost so much, and it also has taught me that who I am has nothing to do with if I have scars, if I use a wheelchair, if I use oxygen, like I still know how to get dressed and look nice. Like I'm more successful, I think, now than I was before. And I think that in a way, what I've been through has given me more confidence. And I love myself more than I have ever loved myself at any period of time. And that's huge because, like I said, the rapid weight gain, the stretch marks, the scars, everything. And I feel the most beautiful now.
How do you affirm yourself of that? Like, what does that look like internally? If it's your internal dialogue of, you know, finding that appreciation, acknowledging those parts that you love, providing compassion to your body and what it's doing for you and what it's going through. How do you affirm? What does that look like?
I think for me, it's looking at models like Jillian, and seeing myself in them and seeing them feel beautiful and realizing like they are beautiful, you know, stunning, first of all, but like there's beauty in their disability and there's so much beauty there. That's part of their identity. That's human diversity. And then I also look at my own pictures sometimes and I'm like, damn, that's a good picture. Like, you know, and even when I'm feeling really, really bad, especially about like, it still happens where I'm like, if I was white, you know, if I was white, and that happens still, I'll like go and look up photos of beautiful women that are same mixture that I am. And I'll be like, what am I talking about? Like, I look, you know, great. Like, I should be proud of my culture. I should be proud of work. It's just, it's work, you know, you have to. And I put a lot into artwork too. Like I draw, I'm working on a picture right now that talks about those identities, you know, writing, therapy.
Yeah.
Lots of therapy.
Yeah, I was going to ask if I know you mentioned couples therapy earlier, and therapy has been a part of this process for you.
Yeah, I'm in couples therapy and then I have my own therapy. So I do therapy like twice a week. I think everybody should do it, honestly. It's amazing, and it's been what's gotten me through, I think, a lot of those. Yeah. And she's taught me how to affirm myself and believe in myself.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult at all to find a therapist that wasn't like perpetuating and projecting out their own ableism onto you?
I specifically looked for a therapist that was a woman of color. And this was the first therapist that I actively looked for that was a woman of color because I could not relate to anybody else. Yeah. She has been the best therapist I've ever had. She's far from being ableist. I feel like she understands some of the things that I feel in other ways. She's a Black woman. Yeah. And I haven't felt anything like that. I think my husband, when he was trying to get a therapist, he was told like, this sounds like it's out of my specialty. And he still has not found a therapist because he's told them like, my wife is disabled, she's sick and this, and they get scared and they don't want to take him, but it's not something I've dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering what kind of resources you have been able to find or within community or perhaps within your therapist, or perhaps it's just the two of you figuring shit out, but resources around how you can navigate within your disability sexual pleasure for the two of you. Like, do you find that there are resources out there, that there are other people speaking on this that helps give you kind of guidance in this area? Or he was just kind of like, the two of you got creative and were like, these are things we can do, let's experiment, like what that looked like?
I'm gonna be honest, it's exactly the same as it was before. I think the only difference is that he's on top most of the time. But it's not different. We haven't changed anything. Yeah. We never looked for any additional resources, but what I will say is that since I do have nerve issues, like it started to affect me in other ways, sensations and things like that. So I think that I was just actually about to start finding more creative ways. There is a brand called Euphoria that has a lot of sexual wellness products, and I think I'm going to be probably working with them soon. I'm not a toy person. Like I've never been, especially because I have a lot of pain in the pelvic area. But like sexual wellness things like oils and things like that, like I think that'll help a lot. But it's a new problem that we've got.
Yeah. Foria is great. I've worked with them in the past. Love their products. They're great. I'm happy to hear. I hope that they do work with you and that you get to share that. I think, like that makes sense that with some of the nerve complications that toys might not actually be as pleasurable. And you mentioned pelvic floor. I actually literally I want to say it's the episode before you, interviewed a pelvic floor therapist. Is that something that like your doctors have recommended or that you've experimented with?
They have, but my concern is, what is their experience with connective tissue diseases, with, all the other things that I have, because even when a gynecologist just does an exam, it's a problem. Like I could be crying sometimes. So I know a lot of pelvic floor therapy is internal, and I've been, that's something my doctor told me to do a couple times. It's not something I think I'm ready to do yet. But I have researched it. There are exercises you can do where you don't have to have anything in there. And I do those regularly because of course my bladder is affected too.
Yep.
But I've considered it, just not ready to have an invasive.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can get connected with the woman that I had on. She was really great. And she did talk a lot about like a lot of what she does is without the examination, like without actually being internal. So maybe she has other resources too or something.
Yeah, I would like that because my doctor said like that they do a lot of internal, and I was like, okay, well then no. But, I would for her for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so many different things. I'm honestly amazed sometimes at the shit that we handle as adults, especially as women of color. And then add on top of that, also being disabled. Like, I very much wish that people had more perspective of how fucking much people are carrying with them.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds like you have to carry so many different things, and there's so many different areas of your health to be concerned about. And that is like, I don't even know how you fucking focus on work or modeling or doing your makeup when you have all of that also to be thinking about.
It's
I don't think I would adjust well.
Yeah, it's a lot, especially because, I started school last year too.
Yeah.
So I have had moments where I was like, I'm fucking done. Like moments of suicidal ideation, moments of, like those are all real things that I don't think people talk about for fear of being stigmatized, because mental illness is so, it's, when they thought I was mentally ill, I would still say that was worse than the way I've been treated now. Doctors believe me now. But before, I was treated horribly, not just by the health community, but like by other people who thought that I was mentally ill. But this whole thing, it does affect you mentally. And a lot of people do have chronic or mental illnesses because this shit is hard.
Yeah.
That's why I stress therapy, because it keeps you mentally healthy when that shit gets really, really hard. So it is a lot. And, a lot of people can't believe that this is a lot of people's realities, but like, this is real life. This has happened.
Yeah. Well, it's like, a lot of people can't believe it because also a lot of people aren't exposed to it, and it's not shown, and it's kind of like pushed to the side of like, oh yeah, like the disabled people, like the handicapped people, like they're over there, like you're very much othered within that community. So it serves able-bodied people to not see the amount of stress and all of that shit that you actually do deal with. And I mean, then I feel like that just kind of potentially like benefits certain systems within our society of, medical field, perhaps, insurance companies, perhaps. I don't know.
Everything, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so you mentioned makeup, your outfits. How else do you love on you?
Meditation. I love Hertz frequencies. Someone told me about that actually last year, and like for healing. And I was just kind of like, rolled my eyes, like, because I did meditate already. I just never heard of Hertz frequencies. But then I was like, whatever, what's the hell? Let me try this. And it was very mentally healing for me. I mean, obviously it's not going to cure any type of anything, mental illness itself or anything, but it was, I would say it helps me, because if I'm all stressed out mentally, like my physical health will suffer. So meditation, writing, I did get this cool star projector because going outside can be an issue for me. And it's like looking up at the stars at night. And that's very much self-care and self-love. Candles, eating. I love food. I love food. School can even be, sometimes if it's not too stressful, it feels like self-care to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm wondering, I feel like I could keep talking to you for a very long time, and I'm so happy that we finally got to connect on here. But I am wondering, as we wrap up here, if there's anything that you would want to share to folks who are maybe kind of in the position that you were in like 2 years ago. Like perhaps there's somebody listening who is kind of in that transition of coming to terms with having a disability while previously being able-bodied. If there's anything that you would maybe say to that version of yourself today.
Yes. I would say what you're feeling right now is completely valid. You have every right to feel it, and you should feel it, but don't sit there too long. Try and get back up. If you can't get back up on your own, you try to get resources, therapy. And I know not everyone has the privilege of having access to those things, but try and connect with people online who might be going through what you're going through. That was something that helped me in the beginning. And try and create a support system. And if things get really hard, there's nothing wrong with going and seeking, hospitalization for your mental health. It's not something I've had to do yet, but I have the privilege of having access to an online therapist. Not a lot of people have that. But it's just like, I mean, I could tell them a lot of different things, and not to let go of the person you were before. Like, don't let go of your old dreams or anything like that. You can, I think people can still do whatever. If they have a dream, like, you got to just figure out a way to do it different.
Yeah. Like for you wanting to model and be in the fashion industry, like you can still do those things. It just looks different.
And it's harder. You just got to get ready for that because of the added discrimination and ableism. But I mean, there's nothing ever going to change if we're not actively trying to do those things.
Yeah. Well, and then, I'm wondering here too around children, that it sounds like you can't and don't feel comfortable being pregnant yourself, but there are other ways that you can be a mom. It looks different.
I have dogs. Those are my kids. I don't care how anyone feels about it. I swear, dogs are children. Yes. And I don't think I've gotten to a place where I've fully accepted that that's going to be my reality. Like, I'm like, maybe one day I'll be rich enough to afford, someone to watch my kids and be with me at all times. Probably not, but then I do think like what you said, which is there's ways to be a mom the other way. I have nieces, I have nephews. I buy them stuff all the time. Like when I get a little bit of money, I do, because I don't have, and my dogs too. Like there's other ways to be motherly. One of my aunts never had children. She always wanted them. And she was very much like a motherly figure to me growing up. So you don't have to have, I guess, give birth or even adopt or even be with the person that sees you as their parental figure all the time. Like you said, there's so many other ways, like grandparents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love what you said of just kind of like not letting go of who you were and also leaving space to maybe embrace who you're becoming and how your life is changing. It's hard. It's hard.
It is. And I do want to thank you for saying what you said, because I didn't even think about, the fact that there are some things that you're not going to be able to do. And that's just the reality, shooting outside in the summer for a fashion show, for a fashion thing, probably not the best thing for me, probably not going to do that. So it's true. There's always going to be something that you can't do, and it's acceptance. And unfortunately, I think that's a part of most people's lives where something doesn't go the way you plan.
Yeah.
But it's about, what's the word? Not adjusting, but like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like
coming to terms with
your reality and accepting it and adapting, because that's what humans do, no matter what. Like, you just have to adapt, and it's a lot of
hella resilient.
Yeah,
hella resilient.
And everybody can. I believe that everybody can be resilient if they have the tools and the resources to be able to help them be resilient. Like support.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm so happy that we finally got to connect, because you're even more fantastic than I thought you were on Instagram. And I would love for you to share a little bit of where people can find you. And we'll list everything in the episode notes, but kind of how people can support you, whether that be like through following, or I don't know if you do take any kind of payments, if people want to, help support your work. If there's anything you want to share there.
That's a good idea. I've done it before, but I felt guilty. But I'm going to do the same thing where, you put your, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my Cash App online. But you can follow me on Instagram. My username is at Syanne Bloom. So SYANNEBLOOM. And then TikTok. I'm not huge on TikTok, but you can follow me there. Same username.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. And I'm sending you all the positive vibes always. Thank you. This was just great.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.